Hello there. Welcome back to coverage here at Grand Prix Los Angeles. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Paul Rietzel, and we are heading into round number 12. Getting down the stretch here. We're in the MTG red zone now, which means, well, hang on for the ride because we're starting to shape up a top 8 here in the next 3 rounds as we finish off the Swiss portion of the tournament. And this is where they'll start dropping like flies, though I have to say these two gentlemen, they're not actually at risk at this point with stellar records of 10-1 apiece. They can actually lose and still have a good shot at top 8 here.
Yeah, but the size of this field, we're thinking about 13-2 being kind of cleanly into the top 8 with possibilities for 12-2-1. So certainly when you think about 10-1 as a record, off to a great start.
Absolutely. But a big match here because the loser of this match will find themselves in a position with much less wiggle room where the winner, boy, they're in really good shape for top 8. So let's see how this one shapes up. Both players playing very quickly. I can certainly appreciate that. With Ari having Kerizev on defense, holding back a Bomat Courier currently. Nope, in the red zone she goes. Ragavan shows up as well. Right-click attack all, play one way, play a Rekindling Phoenix and pass the turn back to Vidi, who has a Bomat Courier with just one card under it off of his mulligan. And he's got a Scrap Heap Scrounger to join it as well.
Yeah, Vidi has some nice cards in his hand, though. Another copy of Scrap Heap Scrounger and License Integration finds the Dragon Skull Summit, which seems like when I'm playing Black-Red Aggro, all I want to do is draw Dragon Skull Summit every single turn. Mm-hmm. And he does have a copy of Hazaret the Fervent, so he's got some weapons here.
Do you block if you're Ari here for that Scrap Heap Scrounger?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's never easy to know. When your opponent has a cut ribbons in their graveyard, you're oftentimes going to think about blocking, but it's very, very risky.
Yeah, you don't want to let your life total get too low, but how often do you see that block and then the person just goes Chain Whirler and you're like, why did I do that?
Chain Whirler, Chandra Minus, cast any of the number of removal spells. So yeah, it's risky. And so Ari certainly with the Karizev and Rekindling Phoenix is very much on the front foot right now. So, obviously there are many different things you want to balance, but he will probably strongly consider not blocking, and he does in fact take it. I might see Vidi use this License Integration on Karizev before. Oh, no. Okay, interesting. Wow.
He's actually going to use it on Rekindling Phoenix.
Okay, and this is
is he just
bold? He's hoping
all in on the top of the line.
Yeah, he does not currently have a way to remove that elemental. So
it does save him 1 additional damage over killing Kerizev, but if this backfires on him, he will have accomplished very little. Oh no, and he's got to trade his Bomat Courier for Ragavan here?
Interesting. Okay.
Vidi stays at 12. Boy, this is a very committal line here from Vidianto.
Yeah, unique way of playing this situation for sure.
Would you go as far as to call it fascinating?
It's very fascinating. Yeah, it's obviously if he draws something like Goblin Chain Whirler or a 2-mana removal spell to combine with the Scrap Heap Scrounger in his hand, it's going to look pretty smart. But failing that, I mean, he basically has no chance. So yeah, this is not going to be enough.
He bricked. And it's funny because I don't know if you caught that, Paul, but Ari had his hand over the elemental token like, well, you must have a way to deal with this.
You think.
And he's like, okay, I guess I get my Rekindling Phoenix back. I'll take it.
Yep. And so Karizev, which, he chose not to kill last turn, still around, making a problem for him. And
yeah, Vidianto must have just assumed that his only realistic way to actually secure a victory was to take a high variance line like that.
Draw Chain Whirler. Yep.
Right. And it didn't happen. But I think his thinking is if I kill Kerizev, I'm probably just going to lose anyway. Was that a braid?
I think it's a braid 1 turn too late. Yeah.
Baby.
Okay, so he can block and a braid. So he can play both the cards in his hand. If Ari has absolutely nothing and then goes for an all-out attack, he does have a way to survive the next turn by abrading Karizev, blocking the Rekindling Phoenix, untap, draw, play Hazaret, bring back your Phoenix, and attack for exactly enough. It involves Ari having nothing and attacking with everything. But, there's chances.
Look, when you're this far behind and you can identify any possible route to victory, you got to be pretty happy about it.
Yeah. Ari wins if he has basically any spell or a black mana. That will certainly be enough.
That was one of the better spells. Unlicensed Disintegration signals the end of the game, and Vidi's going to be on the play, and hopefully no mulligans for him this time. We won't have to take that high variance line to try to find his route to victory this time.
And Vidi has a card in his sideboard that I've never heard of before.
What?
Ongrath Minotaur Pirate.
Oh, that's one of the ones that are like in standard, but not really.
Yeah.
All right, let's look it up.
We're certainly going to see him bring in Magma Sprays and Chandra's defeats.
Are you ready for it?
What is, yeah, Ongrath Minotaur Pirate.
So you can look on your screen for those of you at home, but he's a Planeswalker, 6 mana. Comes from Rivals of Ixalan, but again, not in the packs.
Uh-huh.
And you can see what he does. +2 deals 1 damage to target opponent or Planeswalker, and each creature that player or that Planeswalker's controller controls. Well, that's a real smooth sentence. -3, return target pirate card from your graveyard to the battlefield. What the? And then the big -11, destroy all creatures target opponent controls. And Ongrath deals damage to that player equal to their total power.
So it's certainly possible that he's put this in his deck because of how much loyalty that it has. It's also possible that this is supposed to be an Ongrath the Flame Chain.
What is happening right now? This card seems awful.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a
We've
mistake.
got an autofill situation?
Something like that, where he typed in Ongrath and assumed that there could only be one Ongrath.
I actually want to know the answer to this.
I
now.
do. I'm curious because Ongrath Minotaur Pirate is it'd be pretty exciting. Now there aren't
He'd
that
be
many.
excited to get on camera.
Yeah, there aren't that many pirates in his deck. I think Karizev is a pirate, right?
Yeah.
Possibly. I think that might be the only one. So
we're playing a 6 mana to get the same effect that Goblin Chainwhirler gives you for free.
well, I guess if you were playing something like this, you'd be playing it because of how much loyalty it got. You'd be attempting to try to tick up for the ultimate. So
Okay, so it goes 5 to 7, 7 to 9, 9 to 11. Ultimate. I don't know, man.
I have a strong suspicion this is supposed to be Ongrath the Flame Chained, which is the Flame Chained Ongrath is one that I've actually quite liked in my when I've been playing the red-black deck. So the players in these post-sideboard games often have different approaches, but what we're going to see in common is things like Chandra's Defeat and Magma Spray to be able to handle the early rush, more copies of things like Abrade to be able to kill, opposing Goblin Chainwhirlers or Heart of Kirans. And then, we're going to see, the really powerful, grindy, resilient threats like Rekindling Phoenix and Hazaret be pretty good in the mid game. So, and then of course we'll probably just see Vidianto close it out with an Ongrath Minotaur Pirate.
I want to know.
Yeah.
That just can't be what's actually happening here. He stepped away from the table, perhaps looking into it. They're looking into it. Thumbs up. TJ says they're looking into it. Gives me the big thumbs up and the big nod over there. He says they're looking into it. Thank you, TJ.
One of the interesting things is not about Ongrath, but about Planeswalkers. We've been talking about this before. I was speaking with Alexander Hayne off camera, mentioning that my opinion is that I don't not like Planeswalkers in the post-sideboard games in this matchup. I find that you don't get to stick Chandra for too many turns and really ride it to victory the way you might against a green deck or against control decks. And he mentioned that sometimes just being able to deal 4 damage and gain 3 or 4 life is pretty important, and you really need to be able to kill Glorybringer if necessary. So
really, did he convince you?
No. Oh, I disagree still. Yeah,
Okay.
I was just mentioning.
Yeah, I know that there's other viewpoints.
He's
I was just wondering if you had come around on
No,
it. Because yesterday you were pretty strongly against it. Yet we did see it multiple times on camera that people just sort of left all of their Chandras in.
Yeah, and Alex Hayne, obviously someone who not only is very smart and accomplished player, but also someone who I respect his opinion a lot, and he comes to the tournaments very prepared. So,
he's a baller.
Even though I'm not changing my opinion based on that conversation, I at least have to consider the possibility that I was wrong. So, if you're not updating based on new evidence, then you're not approaching Magic preparation the right way.
Did you tell him he was stupid and he should change his opinion?
I did, but I wasn't going to say that on the stream. I was going to tell you that after we were already off. So time stop from, as you mentioned, I think that potentially that my instinct that this was not the correct Ongrath could be the case. So
yeah, I think you were right about that, Paul. I asked in the chat if anybody's ever seen that Ongrath, and people are like, nobody's ever played that. It's just not a thing. So
It is a lot of loyalty, but
yeah, you did find the one good thing about that card, at least as it relates to standard. I mean, I'm sure you can find uses for it in other formats, but not here.
so I don't know. I'll confess the exact rules surrounding this. I think what they may have some sort of penalty to help mitigate the deck list error, and then obviously he intended to have Ongrath the Flame Chain in his deck, so we'll see how they resolve this.
Yeah, it looks like the judge is just checking into it now to see what's going on, but I think that they're probably going to end up going, yeah, that's a different card than you registered, and then they'll have to do whatever they need to do to sort it out.
Yeah, historically they've resolved this with a game loss and then correcting the deck list to match what your what your intention was. But yeah, you see judges familiar there. The obviously that the reason why you have a deck list is because you're limited to being able to play the cards that you say that you're going to play, so that you can't play a 25 card sideboard basically with access to whatever weapons that you want. So this is a sort of unfortunate situation where clearly there's no implication of a misdeed or untoward behavior. It's really just a clerical error. So hopefully we can get it wrapped up and corrected.
Well, Vidi showed back up again, but we're still waiting to hear the result of what's actually going to happen, though I do believe that our showrunner, Mark Calderaro, is... Oh, he's typing in our chat right now. I can see it. It says he's typing. The suspense is killing me.
Yeah.
Hopefully, what I'd ideally like to see in a situation like this, just from us in the booth perspective, is that we get to just play.
Yeah,
I understand you can't just let everything go.
Right. I mean, a game loss is certainly a fair penalty for something like this. The judges may have the discretion to downgrade a penalty. I don't know.
All right, so we are going to find that out because he has been assessed a game loss for misregistering his deck, which, as you mentioned, does tend to be the pretty standard issue ruling. But Vidi has requested an appeal.
Okay.
And this is a right that all the players have when you call a judge to your table. You'll usually get what we call a floor judge or a table judge, depending on where you're sitting. This is one of the many fine people that staff our judges here at the tournament. But if you do feel like the ruling that you received at the end of everything was not correct, you have the right to say, I'd like to appeal to the head judge. And that's your last chance. The head judge is going to come in and they will listen to the judge that gave the original ruling, and they'll let you tell them whatever you think you need to hear. Generally speaking, from what I've seen, they need to see a fair bit to overturn it.
Right.
And that didn't seem to happen here because we just saw Vidi sign a match slip. So that's a shame.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to get these things right, double check your deck list. Like, there's no excuse for it. But at the same time, that's a shame. I don't like seeing Vidi pick up a game loss here in such a critical part of the tournament. It's not fun.
It's a shame, but you certainly can understand the position the judges are in because it's another card that happens to be legal in standard.
Totally.
There's less kind of leeway. Exactly.
Right?
If he were to a registered Black Lotus, we know that he's not going to accidentally show up with a Black Lotus in his deck, and then maybe there's some leeway there. But because Ongrath happened to be a legal card and he showed up with the wrong Ongrath, unfortunately, he's going to take the game loss.
Yeah, it looks like, you know how sometimes you're chatting with a friend of yours and it autocorrects to something awkward or weird. Well, this one really kind of caught up with poor Vidi here. So he is going to pick up a game loss. And unfortunately for him, after having lost game one, that means the match is going to Ari Lax. So Ari is going to be 11-1. And Vidi, though I will mention, as we said at the onset of the match here, Paul, he's not out.
Right.
This wasn't him losing out in his top 8 slot. It's unfortunate, and he is going to need to, kind of regroup himself, but he's only got 2 losses and he can still win out and maybe even get in with a X2-1.
And they should be able to now correct the deck list to what he intended, so he should be able to move forward and play the Flame Chain, the Ongrath that he intended.
The one he actually wanted. All right, so we're going to take a short commercial break, but when we come back, we'll have Time Walk Magic for you, so don't go anywhere. Hello there. Welcome back to coverage here at Grand Prix Los Angeles. This is Paul Rachel. I'm Marshall Cycle. Thanks so much for joining us for our continued coverage of Standard. We've got Time Walk for this round number 12 as we work our way through MTG Red Zone. Let's head into that right now. All right, game one here for Time Walk is Larry Lee versus Brett Sinclair. That's blue-black mid-range on the left-hand side, sitting at a cool 10-1. Larry's on black-red aggro, the boogeyman, as it were, in the format. And, of course, he's also at 10-1. And there we go, doing what this deck has done for quite a while. Bomat Courier into Kari Zev. Brett draws Essence Scatter for the turn, and being on the draw looks pretty punishing here. It would look a lot different if he was on the play.
How people feel about this blue-black mid-range versus black-red aggro matchup is very. There's a wide variety of opinions, that's for sure. I happen to think that the red deck is dramatically favored over blue-black mid-range, but people continue to bring these blue-black mid-range decks to tournaments. I know Corey Burkhart liked it. We saw Mark Herberholtz play it yesterday. So obviously, you know, if you're playing a deck in this metagame, you have to at least think that your black-red matchup is tolerable. But man, having a deck with 4 main deck Lin Sleeve Siphoners and 4 main deck Champion of Wits against the Goblin Chain Whirler deck does not sound like an attractive prospect to me.
Oh, especially given that the black-red aggro deck is capable and, in fact, built to heavily pressure your life total while also clearing away those cards incidentally. That is just a really rough combination to deal with. So we have Doomfall apparently targeting Larry Lee in the hand department, and Larry's thinking about responding. Is that what you see here?
I think it's actually on the creature department. Otherwise,
okay.
Yeah, there'd be nothing to.
He would just be showing him.
He would just be showing him. Yeah.
Yeah, I see his hand now. I didn't know if he had a response, perhaps, that he wanted to line up, but that is not the case. So it's just going to be Kari Zev that goes away as Larry maintains the Bomat Courier value train.
This is brutal. I mean. Yeah, the fact when you're able to.
This is why Bomat Courier is so good.
Yeah, he continues to apply the hand pressure with the Bomat Courier, so Bomat threatening to kind of refresh his hand. But Brett's down to 13 facing a Phoenix. So
right, and what Brett's going to do here is play the Chupacabra here to just try to stem the bleeding on that. Then he has a copy of Vraska's Contempt in his hand to take care of the Phoenix, but the hits never stop. Larry is just dumping threat after threat, and Brett, having been behind since turn 1 with Bomat Courier, has never been able to catch up.
Is that Vraska's Contempt, or is that a fatal push? I mean, if that's a fatal push, he's in big trouble.
Is
yeah,
that a fatal push, Paul?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it might be. In which case,
you're right. It's a fatal push.
Yeah, so
and maybe fatal for Brett here.
That's a fatal difference, I think, of a removal spell.
Yeah. Well, GG. I mean, he's just never in this game for even a second. And the truth is, even if that was the Vraska's Contempt that I thought it was, he's probably still losing.
Right. He started the game before it started at around 40% to win and never got higher than that.
Yeah, now he's going to play the best card in his deck, the Scarab God, and it's probably just not going to matter.
He's actually going to die this turn.
Are we Dobbs? Bzz. Bzz. There we go. That's going to be game number 1 going to Larry Lee. And boy, it just makes it look easy.
And this is what I mentioned, right? The blue-black deck went turn 2 Essence Scatter, turn 3 Doomfall, you turn 4 Ravenous Chupacabra, turn 5 Scarab God, and died by a lot.
By a lot.
Yeah.
Like, what more do you want? It wasn't even close game.
You didn't even have one of those games where you had Siphoner into Champion of the Wits and then got blown out by a Chain Whirler. I mean, you did exactly what your deck wanted to do, and you got destroyed.
I feel like I'm starting to come down on a strong opinion on the blue-black mid-range versus black-red aggro debate that you were mentioning a minute ago.
Yep. Now, the blue-black deck does get to use quite a bit of interesting tools here post-sideboard. Brett has a lot of one-ofs that are kind of interesting. We might see him use Essence Extraction as a way to kill something like a Chain Whirler or like a Kari Zev and gain some value back. Confiscation Coup is pretty interesting, both as a way to take a Rekindling Phoenix or potentially something like Hazaret. So we might see him use that as well. And just to see if he wants to use Vizier of Many Faces. I don't know if this is exactly the right matchup for it, but it can help him kind of play that mid-range, late-game type of thing. Truthfully, what he wants to do is just be on the play with the Scarab God. The problem is that so much of his deck is based around Champion of Wits and Glensleeve Siphoner, 2 cards that have been giving control decks fits for some time now, that just they do such a great job of giving you card advantage and selection and smoothing your draw. But when the creature size matches up so poorly against what Larry's able to do with the Chain Whirler and things like Kari Zev, it's just they're rough. What you don't want to do is try to out mid-range black-red aggro. You either want to get completely under it in terms of being, the Ben White's super cheap red, or you want to play control. And that means Teferi, that means, possibly Fogs, that means possibly, the blue-white or Esper style Teferi decks. To try to out mid-range, the best mid-range deck in Standard is tough. And we see it listed as black-red aggro. And that game, it certainly looked like black-red aggro, but it has such incredible staying power. Cards like Rekindling Phoenix, Hazoret the Fervent, Chandra Torch of Defiance are just so powerful moving into turns 5, 6, and 7. And you're sitting there with also the threat of Glorybringer hanging over your head if you were ever to potentially tap out and let them hit you with that. And we've seen how brutal an exerted Glorybringer can be in any sort of a close game.
Yeah, it just looks like when you try to meet them at the same level, their just cards are better.
Yes.
I mean, it's just blue-black mid-range is playing a bunch of fine Magic cards, but if you kind of put them in the arena against the similarly costed black-red cards, they just don't hold up. And boy, Chain Whirler wiping away your 2 and 3 mana creatures is really annoying. And we're not even talking about Llanowar Elves here. Now.
Right.
We're talking about I spent 3 mana on this thing, and you just killed it incidentally. Ugh. Feels bad, man. All right, game number 2 incoming here between these two, though it looks like Brett is going to go back to the well for a mulligan here.
And blue-black, not a deck that mulligans particularly well, as opposed to, again, a black-red deck which has things like Hazoret and Bomat Courier to dig you out of it, or maybe a blue-white deck that all they really need to do is get Teferi down and they go to war. Blue-black mid-range really needs every single resource. He needs to be able to just grind Larry into oblivion, so mulligans are tough.
All right, Brett's kept a 6. Resolve that scry, and off we go. Fetid Pools kicks things off for him, just a mountain and no play yet for Larry. There's that Siphoner, and you just can't ever really feel good about it here.
And we see where Brett lands on the debate of, do we leave in those 1 toughness creatures? Brett just says, yes, these are too important as a part of my deck. I'm just going to kind of cross my fingers and hope that you don't draw the eponymous Goblin Chain Whirler.
Okay, well, this is the important part. He's got that second energy lined up, but if he can manage to get to his turn, he'll actually start to get the benefit of additional card draw from the Glintsleeve Siphoner, which is, well, that's the name of the game, but it's hard to do. Doomfall. Let's see your hand.
Okay.
And no Chain Whirler.
Yeah, not a very good hand, right? So
yeah, a little awkward.
He has the ability to take the Unlicensed Disintegration here, which is gonna in theory allow him to get at least 1 active or 1 trigger from the Siphoner on upkeep, and so then he can potentially sequence those next few turns to be able to handle the more expensive threats in Larry's hand. So
interesting.
Larry certainly has the tools to get himself back into this game, but we've seen that the Glintsleeve Siphoner, if you leave it on the battlefield for a couple turns, it can start to build an advantage up. So, we see Brett make the right play there by taking the immediate answer to the Siphoner. And this is a huge draw step coming up right now in this game.
Boy, rip at a Chain Whirler here. He did not.
Nope.
So his turn is going to be Duress and a Bomat Courier. Duress is going to take away Never and leave him with just Champion of Wits. And boy, he is exposed to the Chain Whirler, but he doesn't have one.
Right, no Chain Whirler. And Brett is going to be able, he has the 4th land and is going to have to draw 2 cards in his next turn and not in bad shape. So this game is going to be interesting.
And here we go. Cash in a couple of energy and a life to get an extra card. Brett's got to kind of get on that energy thing because Larry's all over it, though, I guess. He ticked it up for him. He ticked it down for him as well.
The rules these days, the players are required to keep track of their energy with pen and paper. So I think we see Brett going to his score pad.
Right. And we put the die on there just for coverage so that we can see it. So he's going to cast the Champion of Wits here. And he's trying to figure out what he wants to keep.
Interesting. This is a little surprising. So he elects to keep a Fatal Push in his hand over a land, and the last card in his hand is Confiscation Coup, which he cannot cast as it currently stands. So
he's just content with taking out one of these threats with the Fatal Push.
yeah, my expectation would be that he's going to want to ramp straight up to about 7 mana to be able to eventually flash back this, to embalm the Champion of Wits. Is it Eternalize or Embalm?
Eternalize for Champion.
So Larry has the option of using Chandra to take out Glensleeve Siphoner this turn, although, it's a little bit risky as he would have to then put Bomat Courier in front of Champion of Wits, and that's not very attractive. Larry's got doesn't have things as smoothly handled as he did in Game 1, that's for sure.
His hand is quite powerful, though.
Powerful for sure.
Yeah, we know he's got the Chandra he can play here, if he'd like. I believe he has Rekindling Phoenix and perhaps a Glorybringer for the draw step. That is a lot of heat.
Definitely a lot of heat.
Ultimately, it is going to be Chandra. Plus, puts you to 16. Minus, kind of, to activate. And bzz,
Yeah.
down it goes. So Larry opening the door there, and Brett saying, "Thank you very much, sir." Ooh, Hostage Taker.
This is going to be an uncomfortable combat step for Larry as Brett is able to.
He's doing it. Gets to kill Chandra here.
All right, so Brett says passes the turn.
Still just with Confiscation Coup left in hand.
And, wow, that's a big draw step there.
Oh, untapped land. Kaboom. You know what's coming. The Glory. And that means he actually gets a chance to get his Bomat Courier back before Brett can cast it from underneath that Hostage Taker.
And pretty surprising play there for me for Larry, that Larry wouldn't value getting the Glensleeve Siphoner off the board before Brett's able to draw a card from it here. It would seem like I'd want to be constraining Brett's resources if at all possible. So
Even at the cost of letting him have your Bomat Courier?
even at the cost of letting him have a Bomat Courier,
Yeah, it doesn't really go with his game plan nearly as well as it does with yours.
And that second card was a copy of Ravenous Chupacabra, which looks so strong on this board right now.
Wow.
So Larry punished a little bit there for his decision to exert the Glorybringer on the Hostage Taker instead of the Siphoner.
Yeah, there it is. Ravenous Chupacabra. No land drop for Brett, but of course that means his hand is all spells. He takes down Glorybringer with the Chupa Chups, and now he's going to lose that Confiscation Coup that he had, leaving him with just the Scarab God.
Yeah, but Scarab God looks pretty good right now.
Not bad.
And Brett being ahead on board already means that both lands and spells are good draws right now, which is kind of the dream situation.
How about Syncopate?
Is that Spell Pierce, perhaps?
Spell Pierce? What was that?
I think that was a Spell Pierce.
That's not really what he wants, is it?
No, it's possibly the worst card in his 75 that he could draw, other than maybe Jace's Defeat. But
when a land is fine.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like he may just end up casting a Return here.
Is there anything tasty?
Nothing tasty, but building another 2/2 out when you have your opponent down to 12 is pretty attractive. And it's unless Larry were to draw exactly another copy of Chandra Torch of Defiance this turn, leaving up Spell Pierce not that valuable. So I like this play here from Brett.
There's a Zombo. Go.
Larry needs something big
Yeah,
here.
big draw steps here for Larry Lee. He's up a game right now. He'd love to try to really get himself back in this game because Brett Sinclair, he's got the Scarab God in his hand. It's just a land, though, for Larry.
Might see. Wow.
He's just going to cash in the Bomat Courier here.
Yeah. big time block on this Bomi.
Go for the double block. I like it. All right, just the choops. All right, let's see what he hits.
It's got to be big. Obviously, he needs something good.
Yeah, he does.
He basically needs another 4-power flying creature, either a copy of. Okay,
Wow, how about this?
that's decent.
Hazoret the Fervent for Larry Lee. He's hellbent as well,
Yeah,
so
and,
Hazoret's going to be a problem. Brett's down to 7.
yeah, and Brett cannot find that 5th land still. So,
Boy, that goes all the way back to that, doesn't it?
decision to get
Yeah.
rid of. Unfortunately, 2 lands to that Champion of Wits. So.
He really wanted to keep that fatal push that he saw as a major part of the puzzle by killing, ultimately, the Heart of Kiran. But, yeah, maybe it's biting him here as he's had a lot of draw steps.
Yeah, and 7 is an awkward total because even though he can attack with the Glensleeve Siphoner, take his energy up to 2, and threaten to trigger next turn, that doesn't really actually work because the Rekindling Phoenix is 4, the Hazoret's threatening to activate and do another 2, so he's not going to be able to trigger the Glensleeve Siphoner next turn. So really, Brett is now all of a sudden in a position where he needs to draw
Vraska's
Contempt.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of that or commit.
By the way, ooh, is that Chandra?
Yeah, although it's a risky Chandra. You want to attack with the Rekindling Phoenix, and then if you were to play Chandra, you're running into something like a potential negate or disallow. You don't know what's potentially in your opponent's deck. Whereas, the Hazoret, when you activate Hazoret, 2's coming in. Well, I guess could get disallowed also, but can't get negated.
But if this Rekindling Phoenix connects, that's a key part of the puzzle because all he needs to do is do that twice. Right? 2 damage, game's over. Even if the Phoenix were to die, he would still be there. He's going to make the greedy might be a strong word, but the higher upside play for sure of playing the Chandra. Well, it looks like Brett figures that he doesn't have anything else to do anyway, so he's just going to cut off that mana and reduce it. We do still need to exile a card here, right? Or is Brett thinking in response? He just put it right to 5, so I
Yeah.
assume that means he's going for the 2 damage.
Not exactly sure what phase we're in here. Oh, can't be at 6.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
not how that
they
works.
caught
There
it.
we
Yep.
go. All right. So Brett Sinclair up against the ropes. Looked like a game that he may have been able to win here, but he didn't find it. And that's Larry Lee picking up our time walk match 2-0. And Larry Lee with black-red aggro is now 11-1.
Mm-hmm.
So right on the precipice of a top 8 there.
To me, that match was one of the best encapsulations of what I've understood about Standard for some time. Brett's blue-black deck in Game 1 went 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop, and died immediately. And then Game 2 got to play all of the cards that he kind of likes to have, the Champion of Wits and Glensleeve Siphoner, faded the Goblin Chain Whirler, and still that wasn't enough to get it done. That is kind of the position that these blue-black mid-range decks are in my opinion, in Standard right now.
I mean, Larry had a few nice, powerful draw steps down the stretch, but it did not feel like he was in a great position to win the game and did so anyway. And then in the face of a great curve out in Game 1, he just easily won.
Yep.
So we can put a stamp on that, right? Like your friend who's arguing that this blue-black mid-range deck has a good matchup against black-red, we can just say, reference this round.
Yes.
We'll move on.
Round 12 of 15 at Grand Prix Los Angeles 2018 begs to differ.
Time Walk 1. And the reason I say Time Walk 1 is because we have Time Walk 2 right now. All right, Paul, now we got Jabberwocky on camera. This is Daniel Wong on the right-hand side and Logan Nettles on the left. Logan, again, is Jabberwocky on Magic Online and also, has played on the Pro Tour multiple times. He's not a huge fan of traveling for Magic. He actually lives in California, so this isn't a super long trip for him. He tends to primarily focus on Magic Online,
Sure.
but boy, I gotta say, man, if Logan felt like it, I think he could be quite successful as a pro Magic player.
There's no question about it, and I certainly empathize with his strong desire not to travel for Grand Prix tournaments. I think that of my 17 Grand Prix top 8s, I have one on the Eastern time zone, and every single other one is in the West,
Is that
on the West
right?
Coast. Yeah, so
Boy, it is tough.
Yeah.
It is tough. When I looked at my calendar and it was like, oh, you got a GP this weekend, I'm like, okay, where? It's LA. It's like, great.
Yeah.
2 hour flight. It's in my time zone. Get
right.
to hang out with Paul for the weekend. Sign me up.
And these tournaments are fairly grueling. I mean, they're fun, don't get me wrong. They're a blast to play in, and the competitive juices can get you through it. But you're playing a pretty competitive mind sport against other people who are prepared and came and want to beat you. And so you got to be on your game for 15 rounds or you can find yourself out.
Yeah, and you run into the buzzsaw like somebody like Logan Nettles here at 10-1. Daniel Wong actually, interestingly, undefeated still.
Wow.
At 9-0-2, Paul.
Yeah.
Does that second draw, how do you factor that in as far as top 8 chances go?
Yeah, so actually he probably cannot lose another match and still make the top 8. He's right on that borderline, where another draw would be the equivalent of that's 2 losses. Three draws is like saying you have 2 losses.
Okay.
With another loss, he's right on the borderline of potentially being able to make top 8.
He would be 12-1-2 by the end of the tournament?
Right.
Yeah, that could be a tough sell. Nettles, on the other hand, is in great shape.
Yes.
Especially if he wins this one.
And both players certainly still control their own destinies. If either player is able to win all, the remaining 4 rounds, they will be in the top 8.
Paul, I want you to use all of your years of experience to tell me who's ahead in this game now, as well as the color commentator.
So I see a lot of cards on the left side of the table that are both face up and face down.
Right.
Now, regardless of what the face down cards, mean necessarily, that's a lot of different things going on,
So there's a lot of things going on the left side of your screen.
Yes.
Okay.
On the right, there's a shiny enchantment and lands of different colors, but not a lot else going on. So
things going on a little lower.
Yes.
See a Fumigate in the graveyard here for Daniel, but he's going to need some serious fireworks this turn, or we're going to be done.
The graveyard is the wrong zone for Daniel to have Fumigate in. He would prefer to have it on the stack as opposed to in the graveyard.
And he does not have another one in his hand. Can he find his way out of this nonsense? He's going to cast Spring? No, he's going to cast Gift of Paradise, which will buffer his life total slightly, but is it even enough? Currently, yeah. There's no way he can fight through those Bomats, right?
No.
Look at all those cards.
Little Bomy.
Little Bomy's doing work. Logan almost has too many cards under those Bomats at this point.
And he's representing 8 damage on the board right now before using any of the cards in his hand, just with the Chandra plus ability, Crewing Heart of Kiran, and then the attack. So if he can find another 2 damage anywhere, he can get this game over with.
Saw that he drew Pia Nalar for the turn.
Okay.
Though it looks like he's a mana short from any pumping. It wouldn't quite be enough anyway, so he's really close.
And the one thing you want to do against decks that are playing with Gift of Paradise and Search for Azcanta is get the game over with as quickly as possible, because it's surprising sometimes. You say go thinking you're going to get another turn, you don't get another turn. Mm-hmm. So he wants to get this game over with.
Is a second Chandra enough to get the job done here?
It would be enough if Daniel doesn't have anything, yeah.
Yeah, and so right now Logan is looking over at that Plains with the Gift of Paradise on it and wondering, what are the types of cards that could interact with this? Because he does have lethal in hand with a second copy of Chandra, Torch of Defiance.
And if Logan didn't know necessarily Daniel's deck list, he would assume that a Plains with a Gift of Paradise meant something like Haze of Pollen or Root Snare. That's not what Daniel's deck does.
Mm-hmm. And Daniel says, I don't have it. The second Chandra and the 2 damage that she brings with her is plenty good enough. And Jabberwocky Logan Nettles wins game number 1. Also of note, that's just kind of an interesting fact about Logan. He is Reduke's cousin, and they played their first Grand Prix together.
Wow.
Yeah, they went to their first GP together and have been playing Magic for a really long time. Reed since he was like 5 or 6. Like, can you imagine not being able to read and playing Magic?
I can't.
You know Dana Fisher?
Yes.
Have you met her? Yeah,
yes.
So she's here this weekend as well. She's 8 years old now, but a couple of years ago, that actually was the exact case for her. When she first learned to play, her dad told her what the cards did, but she had yet to learn how to read, so she just had to memorize all of them.
Crazy.
It's like, when you put it in that paradigm, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
I have it easy. You just read all these cards. Boy, Leonin War Leader again. This card's starting to show up a little more and a little more throughout the course of the day here, Paul.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see how Logan chose to sideboard. Decks like this, when they start to go on a run, these non-standard decks, they start to permeate around the tournament hall. Wow.
Kaboom.
Yeah, that is so good.
Ugh.
I was gonna wonder, does Logan have things like cut ribbons or unlicensed disintegration still in his deck? That doesn't matter because Chandra is the absolute best possible card that he could have had in that situation.
Yeah, I feel a little sick to my stomach for Daniel Wong at this point. His Leonin War Leader just getting snapped off by a Chandra is pretty brutal. Now, there is another one, though.
Yeah,
Maybe it's enough.
But boy, does it feel good to untap with 5 lands plus a Chandra activation going. I mean,
Don't Glorybringer him, Logan.
no, that's not allowed.
Daniel might just quit. He might just say, well, I was in top 8 contention, but I decided to go home instead.
Yep. And a loss would not actually completely eliminate Daniel from contention. He does still have chances with a loss, but oh no.
Oh, no, he did it. Logan.
Yeah.
Apparently he wasn't taught to play nice with others when he was young like we were, Paul.
No, yeah. If there's one thing I've always said about Reed, it's that he's tremendously unsporting. Because of that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Great hair, but unsporting.
Apparently runs in the family.
Yep.
This is unkind.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know where Daniel Wong is from, but Logan's from here. And, when you have a guest, Daniel might also be from L.A. Well, we're 0 for 2 on Leonin War Leader here for Daniel. And how in the world? I mean, I guess he could just sweep the board. Then he's still facing down Chandra. This is what happens when you don't quad sleeve. You bring the quad sleeves, and this type of thing doesn't happen. Is there a Fumigate? No.
You really need something like Our Revelation at this point to get yourself back into this game.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even a Fumigate against Scrap Heap Scroungers and Chandra. I mean, what's that going to do for you? That's not.
And a Glorybringer that already did its job.
Yep, that's not even get you started.
Commit could be part of a game plan, but it just feels like Daniel's too far behind at this point.
And we talked about some of the kind of the key cards in decks, whether it's SRAM or Winding Constrictor. When it comes to these Bant decks, whether they're using Fumigate and Settle or whether they're using Fogs, they really need to have Teferi out for a few turns in a row to look like they're doing anything. And the games where they don't put a Teferi onto the table, your deck looks so impotent.
Well, he has no play, it looks like. He's chosen to do nothing.
Oh, man. Is that a Doomfall there?
To clear the way, really?
Yeah, the coast is clear now.
Logan Nettles, you monster.
I think that
if I'm Daniel, I say, what mode are you naming Logan?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be all she wrote. Stop.
I'd like to report a crime. My God. He had Hazaret too after the Doomfall.
We said earlier today that there was a possibility that we might see some of these rogue and fringe strategies start to crumble and bend under the weight of how powerful the red Chain Whirler strategies are. And I think those last 2 matches were kind of the quintessential example of that, where you just saw the absolute brutal power of Scrap Heap Scrounger, the best card in Standard, of Chandra Torch of Defiance, of things like Hazaret the Fervent, and some of these other cool strategies which are fun and certainly competitive are not favored against good red strategies played by good red players.
And I like that Daniel was pushing the boundaries. He brought in those 2 Leonin War Leaders, which seems like a card maybe a little underappreciated in Standard right now. But the problem is 4 toughness.
Yeah, what's good at dealing with 4 toughness creatures? The red deck.
The red deck,
the
right?
Red deck,
and
yep.
we saw that 4-drop into 5-drop, both of them able to not only kill the 4-mana threat on the other side of the battlefield, but also stick around to do it again potentially later and demand an answer after that. How can you possibly feel even remotely okay about your life playing Leonin War Leader when your opponent goes Glorybringer, kill it?
Yeah.
And now you have to still kill the Glorybringer and your Leonin War Leader's in the graveyard. It's so brutal. These cards are just so good.
And you do gain some advantage, perhaps, from someone like Logan or a red player saying, okay, I'm going to take out maybe my cuts or maybe my unlicensed disintegration, some of that removal. But Glorybringer and Chandra have such a high floor, even if your opponent's not playing creatures at all, that you get to just keep them in your deck as part of your strategy, as part of your complete breakfast, and then incidentally, I'll just pick off your 4-drop while I'm in the midst of it. Like
Boy.
it's just you don't have to slow down for that kind of thing. So it's
and I like that deck that Daniel has too. Now, we talked about it a little bit before, but what is your prediction there for his chances? He is now 9-1-2.
Yeah, he's going to have to certainly win the remainder of all of his matches.
And then he's probably going to have a sweat?
And then depending on how the math works, depending on the size of the field and how other things break.
We'll keep an eye on Daniel Wong for you. We know he's a fan favorite. He's one of my favorite players to watch because he often brings some cool decks, and then he's got the whole quad sleeve thing going on, although only triple this weekend.
That must be the
I
problem.
think we figured out the problem. But on the other side, Logan Nettles cruising to a top 8 here now. He's not locked, but he's getting close.
I mean, if you were to come into the tournament and ask me, okay, who is one of the most likely people to make top 8 of this tournament? We have an established standard format. Logan seems prepared. He's playing the best deck, a tuned version, and playing it well. I would have guessed Logan Nettles would be near the top of the standings going into the tournament.
Yeah, I would too. He's the type of player that every time you get a chance to watch him play, he's impressive. When the pros defer to somebody, especially not in that inner circle of professional players that are on the same testing teams and doing the same things over and over, that's about the biggest compliment you can get for somebody who doesn't routinely play or test for the Pro Tour. And again, that's what Logan Nettles does, and I'm not surprised to see him cruising here.
Not at all.
So he's 11-1.
11-1, yeah. So in theory, you got 3 rounds left. Certainly, if he goes 2-1, we'll see him in the top 8. If he wins one of his next 2, sometimes there are situations where you can intentionally draw. Have to see how the standings shake out. This is a normal-sized Grand Prix, but certainly in the driver's seat. And if he wins next round, I think he'll start texting your friends and saying, "Turn on the stream. I'm in top 8." So,
can you walk us through how that happened? We got a couple of minutes here, by the way. When it comes to, I'm going to sit down against somebody in, say, the penultimate round, and a draw gets us both in. Like, it. You run the numbers. It's not close. There's just no possible scenario. But your opponent doesn't. Where does that put you? Because you're certainly allowed to ask, right? You can say, here's a draw. And you're certainly allowed to tell them, we'll both be in. But we're kind of taught, like, should you really be listening to your opponent for advice, right? I mean, you have a great reputation in the community, but, somebody doesn't know who you are. Should they listen to you?
There's only 2 things that you need to do in that situation. Number 1, be 100% honest. And number 2, remove all possibility of doubt about anything untoward, so anything regarding bribery or collusion. How do you do that? You don't bring anything about splits or don't start talking in that nonsense. You sit down across from your opponent and say, here's the thing. I've done the math. I know that a draw is 100% likely, very likely, whatever it is, whatever is honestly that you've done the math and said, it's 100% likely to get both of us into the top 8. I know this for sure. I can guarantee it with my brand. And then when you say that, you better be sure that's the truth.
Right.
And then if they get that information from you and they decline the draw, play your match.
You play.
Play your match.
You politely accept.
You say, okay, then we're going to play.
Okay. It sounds like we're going to take a short break. Yeah, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, though, we'll be back into live Magic here from LA. Don't go anywhere.